Welcome back. I'm David Mulgrew. This is part 2 of learning Git with GitHub Desktop. So we're at the getting started screen at the moment. If you haven't seen this, check out the previous video. I will try and remember to put a link in for anyone who's found this accidentally. But we're at the getting started screen. This is the first thing you'll see when you've signed into GitHub Desktop, and you have no repositories on the screen. I'm actually not a fan of this because all these functions appear elsewhere in the program, but this is the only time you will see it in this layout, which to me is a tad confusing, the fact that you get all the same stuff with a completely different layout depending how you access it. So we can clone a repository. Now to do that, we can either select one of our existing repositories. You can see here that I have a fairly large history of Git repositories, and there's a load of ones that people have shared with me. If I click on one of these, it will clone it to the local hard drive. We can also do a tutorial, and you can run through GitHub's tutorial. That's redundant if you want to look through it. Do it in your own time. I'm not going to run through it now. Then there's create a repository on the hard drive, and then there's add an existing one. Well, we don't have any on this machine. It's a virtual machine that's just been set up. So we're going to create a new repository. And like I said before, a repository is collectively a reference to the folder where your project sits on the computer and the folder where it sits on a cloud server somewhere. So we're going to hit create repository. So first off is the name. It doesn't matter. We'll do we'll just call it demo repo. A description is optional but recommended if you've got anything more than a really basic project. Okay, important is the location. Now, this is a personal preference thing, but I would recommend you do some sort of organization. So you'll notice I've just opened the choose a location. Generally speaking, you want to place a Git folder somewhere on your computer, because then when you've got more than one repository, they'll all sit in the Git folder. Depending on what your environment is, you'll either want that on your C drive, or you'll want it in your My Documents folder, or you might want it in a portable hard drive. If you're doing things like game engines like Unity or Unreal that have a very large number of very small files, I highly recommend you keep it on your main drive, because the hard drive speed will improve your performance. And if you're in an enterprise environment or a shared environment where you're worried about people using your files and you want to put it somewhere secure, but you need it on your C drive, depending on your setup, putting it in your documents might do. So in some environments, that is actually synced to a network drive somewhere. So what we'll do is we'll go to C drive and we'll go to users, and then we're going to go to my user folder. And this is accessible only to my user. Most of these are stuff that can be remapped. They're not remapped on this machine, but I'm just making the point in case you're in an enterprise environment. I'm going to go new folder, and I'm going to call it Git. Now, it's important to know if you have user profile syncing so that your profile follows you from one machine to another, this folder will not get synced. But we are using it here because it's a performance benefit. If you are somebody who is forgetful and will forget to copy it across, I recommend that you put it in your network drive somewhere that you'll have access to from multiple machines if you're in an enterprise environment. There is a performance downside if you're working on very large projects, but it's a personal preferencing. I'm telling you about both options so you know. So I'm going to select that Git folder. And you'll see here the local path does not include the project name yet. So there's one other thing that we're going to want to do. We'll ignore license for now. We're not going to worry about that. Is the git ignore. Now, the git ignore is something we'll look at in more detail in a little bit. I'm going to specifically do a video on setting this up for Unreal Engine to give an example. But this says don't sync certain files, and we'll go into this in a bit. I'm going to leave it at none for the moment. I'm going to show you how to set it up manually. But if you are using GitHub and you know, like, you're using one of the things on the list, you probably want to select that as a starting point. You see there's Unity here, there's Unreal Engine, there's lots and lots of other ones, there's Python, and these will pre-create the gitignore for you. And again, we'll get into more of that in a moment. So I'm gonna leave it at none. So I'm gonna create repository. So once I've created repository, I get this little window here. I can publish it. Now, you remember from the previous video, pushing your files to the internet. If I hit publish, this will automatically push for me. I'm going to do this now. And it says, what do I want to name it? Do I want to keep it private? So if I uncheck that box, it'll make it public. There's an organization, but we don't need to worry about that for now. This is just a test project, so I'm going to keep it private. There are settings in the repository for adding people. Again, future video. So I'm going to hit publish. And at the moment, the project is essentially empty. It's got nothing in it at all. So if I go to show in Explorer, we have this .get attributes. This is just some default stuff from that tells the repository how to behave. But we don't need to worry about that. So what we're going to put our first file here. So I'm going to create a new text document called readme.txt. Now, if this is a Python file, if this is a Unity file, if this is an Unreal blueprint, if this is a Unity prefab, this works exactly the same way. I just wanted to show you with a very simple file. Now you'll notice when I've created it, GitHub Desktop doesn't update until I click in it. When I click in it, it now says I've got this one file. And it says this file is empty. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our first commit. And our first commit is going to say there's this message box here, and this is what we do. We need to put a title that is descriptive of what we've done. You'll notice if you've created just one file, it will pre-fill this box for you. So I could just hit commit now. If you have lots of files you're committing together, you're going to have to type in some sort of description that says what you've done. And if you want to go into more detail, there is a description box down below. But for now, we're going to accept the default that we've created a readme.txt, which I accidentally made .text because I don't have file extensions enabled. Let's enable file extensions. Make sure you have file extensions enabled if you're coding. So readme.txt. You'll notice it doesn't update in GitHub until I come back to it. I'm saying this repeatedly because it's important. It's something we'll come back to. Right, so I'm going to commit to main. So you'll notice now I have a big blue push button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up GitHub, github.com to show you how this looks on the website so you can get a sense for what is actually happening. So I'm on github.com. I'm going to go to my profile, and I'm going to go to your repositories, and my most recent one will be at the top. You see this demonstration repo here. I'm going to click in there. And you'll see this gives me a list of files. At the moment, it says I've got a Git attribute, and that's it. See, this README here is telling me I don't have a README. Do you want to create one? Not going to touch that through the website. What we're going to do is so you'll notice that even though I have a README file here, it's not on the cloud yet. It's not on the website. So in GitHub Desktop, I'm going to hit push. You'll notice the button at the top changes and it thinks about it for a minute. And then if we go back and I refresh the web page, that has placed the file on the web page. So that's how we get something on. I'm going to full screen that. So Now, I'm going to open readme.txt and I'm going to write, this is a helpful instructional file. And I'm going to save it and I'm going to go back to GitHub Desktop. What it'll do is it'll recognize that the file has changed. So you'll see that it's got the file in this list here. In text-based files and a lot of other files, it will actually tell you what the change is. You'll notice it's slightly green and there's a plus. So I'm going to hit commit again. Now, commit creates a snapshot. I'm not going to push this time because I don't need to. Not yet. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add another line. I'm going to add 2 more lines. And we're going to go back to GitHub, and you'll notice it's telling me I've added 2 lines. There is now 3. Now, if there's a lot of lines in here, it won't tell you all the ones that haven't changed. It'll tell you the ones around what you've changed just for context, but it won't tell you everything. And I'm going to commit that just because I want to get to one other point that's important. Now, if I come down here and just rename this second line, this is a redundant line. I'm going to save that and I'll go back to GitHub Desktop. It will tell you here in red, this line has been removed and it has been replaced with this line. What this is doing is it is tracking the changes of every line and every change throughout the file. So I'm going to hit commit. Now, if I tab over to the history tab here, you can see I've got a list. I left them all at update readme. The title of these was update readme. But if I click on them, I can see which file there was. And on the right-hand side, it will tell me the changes of each file. So if I've messed something up and I don't know where, I can go back and I can look at what I did. So now, very important, the end of my working day has come. I have done all my work, or I'm even just getting up for a lunch break. I'm going to hit push. And that's done. Now, what I recommend you do, as a good habit to get into, is when you sit down to work for the day, open GitHub Desktop before you do anything else and sit it in the background. Because when you close, if I make a change here, when you close the thing you're doing, if GitHub Desktop is sitting in the background, you will immediately be met with, hey, there are some changes. You need to commit them. So I'm going to hit commit again. And again, you'll see this blue push button. And once you've done that, we are done for the day. I can walk away from my PC. It is now happily on the cloud.
So at this point, you might be wondering, well, what's the big deal? Why is this so important? Why is it so critical for software developers, for team projects, and why is this better than just copying it into a folder? So we've got a demonstration repo here. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that I've broken the project. Something terrible has happened. I know it was working an hour ago. Last time I pushed the changes to GitHub, it was fine, but it's dead. I cannot fix it. I can't even get it to open. It's just corrupt beyond recovery. So what I'm going to do, this is the most drastic thing you can do. I'm going to go to where the project is sitting and I go up a level into my Git folder. And I'm going to delete it. You might want to copy it and rename it if there's stuff in there you still want to keep and maybe go through. But I'm going to delete it. Now I'm going to go back to GitHub Desktop. And it's what it's saying is, I can't find the repo. It's gone. And your first option is locate. So if you've moved it, you can locate it. You could remove it to be like, well, I don't need it anymore. I did delete it. I don't want Git to track it anymore. Or we can hit clone again. What this does, cloning it, is now re-downloading it off the cloud. It's taking it off GitHub's website and putting it back on our machine. If I go back to the file structure here, it's back. Git has put it back, and everything we put in here is back. This is a thing that we'll discuss in the next video a little more.
So that's how to create a repository. That's how to edit. That's how to get it up and down. In the next video, we'll discuss gitignore in a bit more detail, and we will then create a project for a game engine, probably Unreal Engine, and we'll go into that a bit more. And then in the following video, we'll discuss some branches and like project and team management stuff.